Well, anybody who has been following this channel for a while knows that one of the projects I started in 2016 was the Hillary and Bill Clinton Presidential Penitentiary Library. It was kind of a joke. It's gotten to be kind of a life experience for me. Maybe I could have done some more fruitful endeavors with my time, but this has been like what we're doing right now with our guest Gary J. Byrne, U.S. Secret Service, Air Force Tactical Police, was it?
Security Police.
Security Police and Federal Air Marshal Service veteran. It's truly like a new experience because we're talking about somebody who not only served in close proximity to the Clinton family, but also had to testify in court against them. So, Gary, how's your book tour been? I have both of your books here conveniently. Secrets of the Secret Service from 2018, and we have Crisis of Character from 2016. So, it's
book tour has been good. The first book tour, Crisis of Character, was crazy because as you know, it was being pushed by the election. I truly thought that I'd have a garage full of unsold books, but it didn't work out that way. It did very well thanks to support like yourself, and Matt Drudge picked it up. That helped a lot.
Yes, he's kind of been an institution since the 90s, possibly because of the Clinton. You have to excuse me. I do cough once in a while, so I'll turn off the microphone if possible. But let's get into some of the questions. So first, I do want to focus on the new book because it's not only about Bill and Hillary Clinton. So, as a veteran of the Air Force, the Secret Service, and the Marshal Service, could you compare your treatment by all three of those since you left as a veteran and also maybe as an employee?
Sure. So when I was in the Air Force, the Air Force Security Police is basically, law enforcement protecting Air Force bases, personnel, and equipment, and that kind of stuff. And we used to joke with each other that if you were an Air Force security policeman, you were outstanding. You were either outstanding in the sun, the rain, the snow, but you were always outstanding. So, so as I left, I was a young guy. You got to remember, I'm 55 now. When I joined the Air Force, I was 19. By the time I left, I was 23. So we used to joke that any job that you had after the Air Force, no matter how they treated you, it'd be tolerable. And that was true to a certain extent. The Secret Service was a dream job. I liked it. The training was very good. They treated you well to a certain extent. It depended on who you work for. As a whole, when I look back at it now, of course, I'm very grateful. And the truth is, of 9/11, this is a little bizarre to say, but if 9/11 hadn't happened, I would have stayed there. And that, of course, what I mean by that is I transferred from the Air Marshal, from the Secret Service to the Air Marshals after 9/11 because I was a little fed up with the Secret Service. What happened with the Lewinsky scandal, and to explain it a little bit better to your listeners, after the scandal was over and myself and the other people involved had testified and done what we were asked to by law, and also tried to follow the directions of the Secret Service, we were kind of shunned. I was told flat out when I transferred to the training center to be part of their security detail, under the ideal that eventually I'd become an instructor. That's really what I wanted to do. But I was told after the scandal that I had a better chance of being the Easter Bunny than I did becoming an instructor, because the senior people in the Secret Service kind of, they were using me as a whipping boy. I was kind of the person they would push forward to testify because I could tell, Judge Starr believed I could tell them that Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky had lied on those affidavits. And that's what really the scandal was about. It wasn't so much about sex. It wasn't about sex. It was about perjury, suborning perjury. Bill Clinton signed an affidavit, had Monica Lewinsky sign one, and the affidavit stated that not only did they not have an affair, that they had never been in a room alone together. And Starr believed that we could tell him that. And through his investigation, he believed I was the one that could tell him. Not that I would tell him, that I could tell him because of the research they did. And one of the first things they did, and I believe you probably know this, but they subpoenaed the logbook that sat outside the Oval Office on my post. It was a green logbook. You could probably buy them in any store. And let's say if you worked at the White House and you're a maintenance guy, and I say, hey, there's a light bulb out in a lamp. You'd come, you'd show me your pass. I know who you are. I have to write you down in the book. You'd go in there, change the light bulb out, and I'd write next to your name, change light bulb. And if you went into the dining room to check the light bulbs, I'd write you went in the dining room to check light bulbs. It was just a log to keep track. When Starr knew this log existed, the first thing he did was he subpoenaed that log and the log for the ground floor post, similar to mine over in the mansion. So after that, it was kind of the wheels fell off. So, sorry, back to your original question.
Yeah.
The service treated me pretty well, except for that. The individual, let me break it down a little bit. The individual supervisors I had some phenomenal ones, and the ones that were not good, I won't even discuss them, because the ones that were good, like Sonny Schoonmaker, Jennifer Kramer, Nancy Anderson, these people were great, and they took care of me. And and this is important. They adapted as things had changed, as the investigation got more intense and the pressure on us got more intense. They adapted. I mean, they were doing shit that was close to breaking rules to make sure we were okay. They were really good to us, and so I'll never forget that. The air marshals was a whole different new job. Part of the problem was that 90% of the management in the new air marshal program came from the old Secret Service. So it's kind of like they transferred the bad management disease. It's and so, but the people I worked with were great. I met some phenomenal people. The air marshals, like the Secret Service, have a lot of issues. That's the reason I wrote the book, Secret to the Secret Service, to bring out the truth about the Secret Service. And unfortunately, excuse me, most of those same problems, they transferred to the Air Marshal Service. So.
Okay, so I have some follow-up questions on this, on the Secret Service specifically, not pertaining to the Clintons, because that's a whole different department that I've set up.
Yeah.
So let's ask this one first. You described that North Korea incident where President Clinton was crossing the bridge. I also, in my mind, the funniest risky moment was when George Bush parachuted onto an aircraft carrier. So do you think that those risk-taking procedures really started to slide down the hill because of the Clinton era?
You took which Bush parachuted?
The mission accomplished when he parachuted onto the
parachute. He flew a jet onto the carrier.
That still has a little risk to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So no, I don't see it the same. The wheels. No. Here's the thing. Here's what you're kind of getting at, if I may. Presidents, it's all about image, and clearly we learned that with the Clintons. The real Bill Clinton is nothing like the image that they portrayed. The real George W. Bush is pretty close to what you saw. He was a fighter pilot. He flew F-4s in the Air Force. When he was on that small plane coming to the carrier, they let him fly it for a while. He did not land it on the carrier, but it was all choreographed. The pilots were all ready. They knew what was going on. They had briefed the president a little bit on the plane. They didn't just let him grab the stick and woohoo. So, but yes, they are risk takers, because and actually, you're going to laugh when I tell you this. I'm going to ask you a question, if you don't mind. Who do you think was the biggest risk taker as far as presidents?
Well, throw out the most unlikely case, maybe Carter.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's my opinion, and we can talk about that later. But so they take risks because they want us, the public, to see them as strong and macho, and the idea that he flew the plane for a little bit looks good for PR. But it was choreographed. The Secret Service agent, there was one agent on the plane with them. Not that he's a pilot or anything, but they discuss these things. This is what the president wants to do. What are you willing to let him to do? Is that safe? Yes, it is. There's 2 pilots on the plane. It's all good. So,
okay, so let's get to the central imperative of your book, the Secret Service book, Secrets of the Secret Service, which is that you actually say that the agency may come to collapse due to a lot of the fatigue and corruption. I don't know if it's corruption, but you could say institutional decay. What do you think that would look like? Would it be like catastrophic, or would it be something kind of more bureaucratic?
Well, to be honest with you, What I actually say is that it's already failed. And what it does look like, it looks like President Obama going to Cartagena and have, instead of talking about agreements between the different countries, he had to talk about hookers, drunken Secret Service agents, and bad behavior. That's a complete failure. Now, the Secret Service put a nice spin on it, and Obama's administration was nice enough to put a spin on it. But have no doubt in your mind that they defecated on the bed. They completely screwed that up. And but that's just one example. That's like an embarrassment as far as political embarrassment. Go fast forward, and they're in Atlanta, Georgia. The Secret Service, President Obama goes to Atlanta, Georgia, to the Center for Disease Control, and in one day, due to fatigue, due to bad decision making, and poor advance work, the Secret Service let a man with a handgun that had a criminal history, who was a security guard. He'd never had a background check. They didn't know he was armed. They let him get on the elevator with the president of the United States 3 times. And not until the end of the day, when the president was leaving and this guy pulled a camera, his phone out, and started taking pictures, did they know anything was going on. And that's completely unacceptable. And I have many examples. This is the thing. When I started writing the book, it started the book was supposed to be about regicide, which is the word for king, slaying of a king, and assassination. But after a couple months, Grant and I decided, we're writing the wrong book. This needs to be more of a history book about the Secret Service. And to tell the truth, they failed President John Kennedy. They failed President Ronald Reagan, and they failed again. Now, they failed many times, and we don't know about it. But because of the research that I've done, a lot of it's in that book, as you know.
Okay, so I have a question from one of my audience members. He sent me this morning. It says, is it true what some say that President Trump has his own private Praetorian Guard, in quotes, via Eric Prince's security service companies? If so, what interesting new questions does unity of command doctrine raise in regards to the Secret Service? And he says, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Obviously, it's somebody that knows a little bit about security. So, or law enforcement. So President Trump's private security guys, these are guys that were former New York City police officer, former FBI agent, a couple of them, and then a couple are former military. There are not many of them. I know I've seen all kinds of reports. There's only a few of them, and basically, they now work for the federal government inside the White House. They're not part of they're not part of the Secret Service security. They consult with them. They're not intermingling like they did during the campaign with the Secret Service. The president's protection by law is by the Secret Service. Are they still there? Yes. Because you also have to realize too, and President Trump made this very clear, these guys weren't just a security, they were confidants. I mean, these guys, they exchanged, Mr. Trump bounced ideals off this guy. They were both New York guys. So their relationship will be there forever. They do have a role inside the White House, but it's not so much a security role.
Okay, so I would state, like, before we go on, I never supported President Bush or President Clinton or President Obama. I've kind of been like a political gypsy, so I don't really like. I think that if you read this book, you kind of get the sense that these structural problems transcend party lines.
They do.
For the Secret Service. So I think progressives, and I'm trying to get some progressive commentators interested in this topic as well as conservative ones. So I think this should be a nonpartisan issue. The continuing problems in the Secret Service. So going into the Clinton, the Clinton affairs, for lack of a better term. On a personal level, did you enjoy President Clinton's company? We know about your time with Hillary Clinton, which we'll also get to, but given what you've gone through, you had to testify against him in court. Do you find anything agreeable about his personality?
I do, and this is how I put it together for you. He was very kind. He was funny. he did some pleasant things for me and my family at one time. And I'll tell that story after I answer your question. Here's how I kind of put it in a nutshell. He's a very nice guy. He's funny. I liked protecting him. I liked working around them. I liked the job in general, and whoever was in the office was in the office. I wouldn't trust them to drive my 27-year-old niece home. But with that said, I liked them. And I also had a great respect, and this is one of the things that I don't know if it's unique to me, it probably isn't, but people that did what we did, I came to the conclusion that a long time ago when I was in the Air Force, that under certain circumstances, excuse me, that it was okay to sacrifice your life to protect something or somebody. If it was my life that was going to have to be sacrificed to protect our nuclear arsenal, you betcha. If it was my life that was going to have to be sacrificed to save a pilot, trying to get to his plane under attack, you betcha, because it's more important for him to do his job than me to survive. Was my life more important than the person that at least 50% of the country under our Constitution put in office? You betcha it is. But then, as time goes on, that perspective changes. I liked Bill Clinton. He was very good to me. Yes, I had a lot of anxiety about testifying against him, but I dealt with it like this. He's one man. The office is the office. It's part of the Constitution. Tell the truth. Fall on the Constitution, not on your sword. And that's pretty much what I did. Does that answer?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you allude to it more in Crisis of Character, the first book that I read from you, which that was your first book, right?
Right, it was.
So also in Secrets of the Secret Service, you go into the dilemma of Director Morletti concerning the Lewinsky case and whether the Secret Service can furnish testimony or other valid legal witness material. So it was proven that this executive protection function privilege was not really in existence. It was kind of like a troll myth of the Secret Service or something.
Yeah.
But if that was true, then I have plenty of criticism of Counsel Starr. I think he should have subpoenaed somebody among the agents that guarded Mr. Clinton about the China Gate issue, which was, in my mind, a far bigger transgression than the Lewinsky affair.
Yeah.
So why do you think that never happened?
I don't know. But can I walk you through the transition, how we got to the protective function privilege?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So before they invented that, and that was the first time I ever heard those words spoken was during this Lewinsky thing, this scandal. Before that, it was just that we don't talk about, the Secret Service agents don't talk about the protectees, which it sounds really good, and it boosts that image of the Secret Service once of the agents, and I guess of the officers, that there's some kind of a cross between a James Bond character and a character out of a Clint Eastwood movie, which is not really the truth. But yes, we shouldn't talk about these things just for frivolous reasons. But the truth is, way before the Lewinsky scandal, Secret Service agents have been writing books. They've been telling these stories. And one of the criticisms, as you know, when I first wrote Crisis of Character, was that they're not supposed to talk. Real Secret Service people don't talk. Then how did these stories get out? And how all the other books get written by third parties, because the stories come. I can read those books and some of those books, and I can tell you who told you those stories, because I knew who was there when the story happened. It wasn't me. And I know there were Secret Service agents. So here's the deal: they'll do it for a free drink and a free steak over at Old Ebbitt's Grill. They'll tell these guys the stories, but let a uniform division guy come out and tell the story and tell all of it truthfully, and then they get upset. But back to your point about this protective function privilege, they invented it. It's basically the Secret Service lawyer came up with the ideal with one of the Justice Department lawyers. It's kind of a parody of the spousal thing. My wife can't testify against me, that type of thing. So that's where they kind of invented it. Now, when they first, I will tell you this, to give you and your audience, I mean, I think it's funny in hindsight. but we're all in this room. There's at least